It is a Wednesday, and we're joined, as usual, by Ignacio from Perth and Heredia, the AlicanteLawyers.ES, and also this week, our esteemed guest is Richard Hill from Brexpats, Spain, the president known as. Good to see you. You're back in the studio again. I think it was Moody you spoke to last time, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
And quite a long time ago now.
Yes, and there seems to be obviously some synergy with what's happening as far as the latest developments on the Brexit front are concerned, and what Ignacio and his team are doing. So hence you're both here together. I suspect, though, that you might want to talk a little bit about misinformation because there is a lot being said by different people in different places, and the problem is these days it all ends up online and you don't know what's true and what isn't. What are the worst things that people are getting misguided by, say, Richard?
Well, I would say it's the new border controls that are coming in. That's one thing. The visas. The people are misunderstanding the visas, the particularly family reunification visa and the nomad visa. They don't understand the ramifications behind them.
Are these things that people can just approach on their own and manage to get through all the paperwork for themselves, Ignacio, or is it something they really do need a lawyer to help with?
Right, this is a good question. I mean, some people dare to do themselves, and don't get me wrong, you could try to do yourself, but it's a lot of work, a lot of running around, getting paperwork, a lot of questions. I mean, it's a very hard job to do it all by yourself, especially when the administration doesn't help you at all, or very little, as you know.
Yeah, a bit difficult.
Yeah. And yes, depending on the kind of visa or residency permit, or then you could try yourself and see how it goes. But some of them needs to be done here in the area. Sometimes you need to do it in your home country. Some Spanish consulates are better than the other ones, and that's the truth. You know, we know because we try to organize appointments, we try to speak to them. And dealing with them is a bit of a nightmare. Mm-hmm. So the answer is, could you do it? Yes, but probably good luck. I
was going to ask Richard if you'd actually heard of anybody managing to get through the whole thing without any help, but I suppose not, really.
Well, yes, we have.
Yeah. As a body, as Brexpats Spain, yes, but perhaps an individual. No?
What I would say is that if you don't speak the language, forget it. And if you want the job done properly and save yourself money, frustration, and a lot of sorrow, get an expert to do it. Mm-hmm. Because trying to do it yourself, whichever the visa is, if you don't speak the language, is nigh on impossible. And in the end, it's going to cost you a lot of money because you're probably going to bounce. The application's probably going to bounce. You're going to have to do it again, and you'll get refusals. Whereas if you go to an expert like Pellicer and get it done properly the first time, it's a much better way to do it.
Much more likely to be successful. We touched on misinformation at the beginning there. I do know some people who were rather concerned because somebody gave them the idea that they might need a visa even though they already had a TIE, and we know that's not right.
That's completely wrong.
Yeah. What are the other things that you hear? What sort of other things are people misguided by?
Well, I'll give you an example from last week. A gentleman contacted me and said he had to go back to England because a relative was ill. But he thought he would... He's a resident, by the way, with a permanent TIE in Spain. Mm-hmm. And he said, the trouble is, I think, because of the illness of my relative, my wife is going to have to stay there longer than 90 days.
Right.
And I said, but hang on a minute, you've got a British passport, you're British.
The other way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And people...
But it is easy to get confused.
Yes, it is.
And there are people around who kind of tell you things that ain't right. Not, not just in the bar, but online, certainly.
We also forget that there are some people, more than you might expect, who are not computer literate.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
Yeah. And they rely on people like you to give them the information.
And we get confused, I have to say.
Well, don't we all?
Moody and I regularly putting the news together, and we check with each other and go, is this changed? Is this right?
We see a lot of information and we double check it before we put it out. because it is confusing.
You've been at this, since about 2016? Was that when
Yeah,
you set
about
up Brexpats in Spain? And I guess things have changed quite a bit, because at that time we were dealing with the immediate fallout of Brexit, and people were scrabbling around for a TIE or even trying to find their old green residency card, which people are still bringing to Ignacio. I know they are. And so how have things changed? Are you less busy now? I know that you've extended the service now, not just to Brits, but to also out to other expats.
We have, and yes, we are as busy as we were.
Really?
It's different. It is now support more than about Brexit. Brexit is done and dusted, whether we like it or
We're not
lump
going
it.
back either,
No.
are we? That's not going to happen. Certainly, as we can see, the early days of the Labour government, the first 100 days or so, there's been a little bit of talk about, perhaps the Erasmus scheme, possibly, but nothing near like what was ever going to be before. And we can't just sit back and think, it's going to get itself sorted out. That's never going to happen.
No. So we're stuck with what we've got. And we're now more about supporting and helping people to live in Spain and to move to Spain under the new systems.
So it's quite a lot of management, I would have thought, managing, because it's not just the one main Spain Facebook page, is it? I've seen you've got an eastern version as well for people on the eastern side of Spain. So the things differ quite a lot then, I guess, with the different regions. We generally talk quite a lot about the regions with Ignacio, where we go, well, they do this here, but they do that there. Has this been your experience?
Yes, all the time. A prime example is Andalusia and up here. The differences are quite marked. Inheritance, for instance, is completely different down there.
Yeah, actually, you were telling me today that dealing with the administration in Andalusia people, I mean, is quite unique, because you are making a petition of a residency, which the law is the same in the whole country, but every different office has got a different approach, and sometimes it's lack of experience. Sometimes you get these in Almeria answers or situations which you don't get it here, and they've got it very clear here, and why they don't have it that clear over there. I think, and that's why when we're trying to assist people from any problem they have, and we ask, what is the region where you are and where do you need to submit it? And they say, okay, Albacete or Almeria. I say, okay, that's a different...
It's first question.
Yeah, and then I put everything in quotes, saying this is what it is, but we need to bear in mind that they're not that familiar, or they've got a different approach. And sometimes you need to value whether it's worth it resubmitting again, even though they made a mistake. And resubmitting probably is easier than appealing the decision. So that's basically what you could end up. You really have everything, all the documents, everything you submitted, and they reject it. And then here we go. But is it really worth appealing?
As we saw with the TIE, people were being rejected and then having to go back again, and some people went back 3 times. I'm speaking from personal experience. Had all the right things in all the right places, but possibly not the right person at the right time.
Yeah.
And on my 3rd attempt, it finally came through. So, and this was similar. Now people are still experiencing those issues.
Absolutely. And the problem is, and I'm not going to name groups or types, but there are various people that offer their services to do a TIE or to get the residencia. To do these things, you've got to know what you're doing. And some of the people who offer their services don't.
They charge a pretty penny for it.
And they charge a pretty penny for it. And the trouble is, when it goes wrong, they charge again to try and put it right. And we've had experience where people have gone to 2 or 3 different organisations to get their residencia, failed, come to us, they've already spent a few thousand. We contact Ignacio. I mean, you and I both were talking about a case in point this morning. We pass it to Ignacio. Ignacio deals with it. It's done. You've got to know what you're doing with immigration. And many of these organisations don't.
And as you said, a lot of people who are still attempting to find their way through here aren't online and aren't computer literate, so therefore, are having to go to other people to try and help them through that.
Yes.
There is one thing, Carl, here, and I always, the visas is a very stressful situation, and we're talking about something very subjective. It's personal. It's life. It's enjoying in a country. It's about freedom.
Being able to stay where you've been for a number of years.
Yeah, so it brings a lot of personal stress, and I don't think it's worth just to go and pop into wherever without having a little bit more of security on who you're hiring, because unfortunately we get all these people that they go to whatever store or whatever office that probably they don't have that much expertise. They try to help their way because it's passing paperwork, but what you don't realize that they could ruin, or somebody could ruin that dream, and then you come back to somebody and I say, I'm sorry, you need to go back to the UK now because you miss the appeal, you miss the time, you miss everything. So the bottom line is just end up and try to use people who are professionals, Okay. And this will be pretty much from working together with Brexpats in Spain in the long run. We've heard all kind of stories, didn't we, Richard?
Yeah,
there
are all kind of horror stories out there.
And I always recommend, I was saying to Richard, just try to spend, you probably might go here around because, these are cheap, but be careful when you hear that word, it's cheap. Well, cheap, it might be very expensive because the whole thing, it ruins and it cannot be done. So it's a bit delicate, the immigration
Should point
issue.
out, though, Moody and I were saying at the beginning with Richard, we don't know of anybody who's been sent back to the UK yet. Not a Brit, certainly.
No, we do know of people that have been fined.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they've had a ban put on them returning.
Right.
But we have heard of people who've been fined.
Let's talk about the nitty-gritty then, because I know some people are concerned, those that perhaps don't have a TIE yet, people that are worried about the 90-day situation and the new system, which again has been delayed, the EES, the entry and exit system, would be pretty much controlling how long they get to spend in Spain.
Well, certainly when it's combined with ETIAS, it will.
Right. Okay, and that's something else, and that is the European Travel Information and Authorisation System.
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, I thought I'd better keep it ready. So there are two things then, the entry and exit system and the European Travel Information and Authorisation System. Effectively, it will mean that people either have to have the right paperwork or have to stick to the 90 days, I suspect. That's what it's meant to do?
Well, yes, it also is meant to protect Europe from people they don't want to let in.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I forget always we're a third country now, aren't we?
Yeah, they don't want to let... No. It's meant to stop criminals and terrorists and to ensure that people only stay as long as you said, the 90 days.
Well, of course, there's a big migration problem right across Europe. We hear about it daily. So it's not just Brits that these systems are being put in across Europe for.
No. Well, you hear about the boats going across the channel. Mm-hmm. Well, the same is happening to Italy.
Into Italy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So the same thing's happening.
All right. So let's take them one by one. What is the EES?
European Entry System. Mm-hmm. Now, it doesn't... this is where it gets complicated. It does not affect those with residencia and those who have a TIE. And I've got to stress, it's got to be the plastic TIE.
Yeah.
If you've got the old green card or the green sheet,
it's not going to be valid.
It's not going to be valid, and you're going to have to do the EES. If you've got the TIE, you're going to be able to avoid doing the EES.
All right.
Now, the British Embassy, in its infinite wisdom, originally said there will be some delay at airports, Eurostar and ports, initially when this comes in. Mm-hmm. They've altered that statement
We're still waiting for it to happen, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah, and they've altered the statement already, and they say there will now be significant
Right.
delays. So the answer is ensure you've got a TIE.
So with the EES, travellers will scan their passports or normal travel documents before they go across the border. The system takes your name, type of travel document, biometric data, fingerprints and facial images, as well as the date and location of their entry and exit point.
Correct.
That's your EES.
Yeah. And coupled with your TIE to show that you are resident in Spain, end of story, job done. Thank
No
you very
other
much.
visas, nothing, that's fine.
Straight through. Now comes the but. If you come in to Spain, that is true. If you come into France as a Spanish resident, you need EES.
This is because that's not your country of residence.
Correct.
It's something that's caught me by surprise because you told me about it today, and
Yeah.
I know you admitted you hadn't known that either before.
No, it took me by surprise last week when I found out.
Of course, so people who regularly travel, say, from Spain the other way as well, then if you're going through France, then it's again, you'll need to complete that EES process.
Yep.
If you've got if you've got a TIE in Spain, because that's not the country of your residency. You would have thought there would have been, I know we're going to say it's common sense, but an agreement within EU countries, wouldn't you, that okay, if you've got if you've got the document required for residency in one of an EU countries, you can travel through the others, maybe not stay, but that's not the case.
No, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, okay.
See the luck to go.
There's much betwixt and between in this.
Yes.
Remember, it's been cancelled nearly 5 times.
Well, yes, it keeps getting delayed, and this is because various countries haven't quite got everything together.
Yeah.
I have to say, I was in the Canaries a few months ago, and all of the airports that I went through there were all ready for it, but it seems a number of places, the Netherlands and Germany amongst them, aren't quite ready to.
That is correct.
To go with this.
That is correct, and the problem with it is when it starts, every country has got to be on board at the same time. Now, Europe is saying in the next couple of months, don't hold your breath.
Okay. Right, so that's the EES, the entry and exit system.
There's one more thing on that.
Go
Sorry.
on. Yeah, sorry, yeah.
The other catch is that if you are a British person married to, say, a Spanish person, the Spanish person's going to require an EES.
Hang on.
You've got a British passport.
Indeed.
You are married to a Spanish lady. Mm-hmm. She is going to require an EES.
For where?
No, this is ETA. I've moved on.
Oh, right. I was going to get to the other one.
Yeah, but nothing simple.
No. We'll come to the ETA, because that's going into UK, isn't it? And we'll come to that in a moment. I'm glad.
Yeah, no, she doesn't require an EES.
And we deal with this every day.
Yeah.
This is the sort of stuff. So let's go to the ETIAS then, which is the European Travel Information and Authorisation System. So that works with the EES, the entry and exit system, and that's travel authorisation for citizens of non-EU countries that don't require a visa to enter the EU. So entirely electronic, it keeps track of passengers passing through the borders, yeah?
Yep, that's it.
So nothing really for us to worry about if we've got a TIE.
If you've got a TIE, nothing to worry about.
Excellent. If you haven't...
And unless you come in to another country.
Via another country.
Or travel to another country. Mm-hmm. Mind you, there's no internal borders in Europe.
Well, there are in some countries, increasingly. So,
At the moment, if you went to France, there's no real border. But technically, if you have got your residence here in Spain, you need an ETIAS for France.
Right.
But this isn't a disaster. Normally, you'd go online, you apply for it, and within minutes... you've got it.
Okay.
Sometimes there is a delay. If, for instance, you've got a criminal record, that will be researched.
Okay.
And sometimes there is a long delay if it's complicated.
How long does it last?
3 years.
Get one? Okay. So you don't have to do it each time you travel?
No, 3 years, and it's only £7.
Okay. So that's the ETIAS.
€7, sorry.
Which hasn't started yet either.
No, now
they were saying this month, next month, weren't they? for this
No,
one?
that was the first quarter of 2025 that was coming in.
Right, okay.
But
Originally
now,
it was meant to be this year as
oh
well.
yeah,
but
and last year.
yeah.
But now EES has been delayed.
It's going to be delayed again.
It
also.
may delay ETIAS, but ETIAS doesn't require any more infrastructure.
Okay.
So it may be that they will still be able to bring it in on time. We just don't know.
Okay. All right. So
But the point I must make is swallow, some people think is a derogatory word. It isn't. It is people who travel between Spain and England regularly. They probably got a house out here. A few have been exceeding their 90 days.
right.
We know this, they tell us, and they're quite proud of getting away with it.
But they're worried about the EES.
Absolutely. Once EES comes in, and particularly once ETIAS comes in, that's the end of that ball game.
Because it'll be tracked.
It'll be tracked. In theory, it's tracked now with a stamp, but it relies on a human being interested and even looking at it. And
they're also, I've spoken to a few people who have been doing exactly that, and the stamps are all over the place in the past. You're like, you're going to find it even.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
absolutely.
So do we have any idea about how long it's going to be before the EES and the ETIAS finally come
The
in?
British Embassy are saying about 2 months.
Really?
I'm not holding my breath.
No. Not given the amount of delays that we've seen so far.
Absolutely. I mean, we're up to nearly 5 delays.
So we've mentioned these two systems, the EES and the ETIAS, and we did touch on something else, which is known as ETA, the ETA, the European Travel Authorisation, and that is for people going into the UK who are not British citizens.
Yeah, in fact, it's electronic travel authorisation.
Okay, yeah, sorry, electronic, yeah.
But, yeah, that's what that is. And that is the only one of these three that is already in force.
Okay.
But not for everybody.
So it's come in for different nations at different times, and
Correct.
perhaps you could run through those for us.
Yeah, okay. So, November 23... there's a little bit of a conflict here, by the way.
Okay.
November 23, it was the Middle East, and it replaced the electronic visa waiver scheme.
I see, I remember those.
Right.
Like you used to get going into the States, the white
That's it.
form.
Yeah, that's it. From 22nd of February this year, it was extended to nationals from Bahrain, Jordan, Kuwait, Oman, Saudi Arabia, and United Arab Emirates. Now, 8th of January 25, it comes from. It's eligible to non-European countries, which I would have thought was Bahrain, Jordan, and Kuwait.
You would have thought. I'm guessing those that haven't been mentioned.
Yeah, those that haven't been mentioned. And finally, and this is the one that we should take note of, 2nd of April 2025, it applies to European countries, which includes Spain.
So this is where we touched on earlier then, Richard. If you're a Brit travelling with a Spanish wife, for instance, into Britain, she will need to complete the electronic travel authorisation.
Correct.
To the UK.
Yeah. Now, what that means is they'll be given permission to enter the UK and be able to spend up to 6 months in the UK for tourism and study. They'll be able to spend up to 3 months in the UK on a creative workers visa.
Okay.
What the heck a creative workers
It's a new
visa
one on
is?
me.
Yeah, I have no idea. And also to transit through the UK.
Okay.
So if they were going to Heathrow and spent a night at Heathrow before going on to the States, for instance.
Okay.
It's valid for 2 years and can be used for multiple visits to the UK. No, 2 years, unlike 3 years for ETIAS. I can't remember. It's. I'm just trying to look see if I've got the price here. I don't think I
don't
have.
either.
No.
But it would be around the €7 mark, one would have thought then.
Yeah,
It's a
I think
reciprocal
it
type
is.
of thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not complicated if you are a British resident, a British citizen. The two groups that it could apply to is, as we've discussed, a spouse who is a foreign national, Spanish, French, whatever. And also, if somebody has taken citizenship in Spain and given up their British.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, because then it's going to
give up
apply
your
to them.
nationality.
Yeah. But it's not a disaster. It's not here yet. And
it's basically trying to get everything in order. Which is which, what it is, do I need it, or does anybody else in the family need it? And having it laid out that clearly, which I think you've done quite well.
Well,
this
EES is the
afternoon, Richard.
first.
Yeah, absolutely.
ETIAS is the second. And based on the current predicted timescale, and I'm saying this tongue-in-cheek, ETA is the third stage.
Ultimately, though, would you both, Ignacio, Richard, say that for people who are living in Spain and do not yet have a plastic TAE, really the best thing to do is to get it sorted? There may be other issues, though. People might not be able to find their old big green piece of paper, or they may never have had one. And there are still people around like that, yeah?
If they can prove that they were here pre-Brexit and they've lost their sheet, they're okay.
It shouldn't be a problem. I mean, it's more about them willing to get the TAE.
Okay. But it's kind of, this is going to push people towards that now with the entry and exit system. You have to stick to 90 days.
I mean, if you're not going to travel anywhere, I was telling to Richard, and you're staying here, and I could understand, I'm very old, I'm not able to...
Yes, you are, actually, yeah.
I think he was doing an example. Yeah. It's been like this while the music's been playing,
But I've got some clients here, Carl, that they say, no, I've got the green card. She is very old. She's in her house. She's
not going to be
she's not going to be travelling, and she stays here. She wants to stay here. This is home for Spain. Okay, I could accept it, because... The hassle is big for elderly people and going, because you need to go.
You actually
personally.
have to physically show up.
So if you physically cannot attend, it is a nightmare to go through all this process.
How difficult is it for somebody who, say, perhaps never got the green residency, still haven't sorted out a TIE, but does have property here?
I haven't seen yet
just to
people
travel
without
backwards and
the
forwards.
Green one, but probably you have.
Yeah, we
there
have.
Are.
Yeah, we had one. Well, I can tell you, we had one. Yeah, who is under the radar. I'm not going to go into too much detail.
No, of course not. No. But we know they exist, and I know
under the radar. Didn't even know Brexit had happened.
Wow.
And has
you missed that?
Yeah, and has no paperwork.
Okay.
You get everything.
And how difficult is it to help somebody like that, Richard?
They asked us for help, and I said, go back to England.
Well, okay.
Well, the way I would say in these respects here, Richard, they could do arraigo. Probably, if they have arraigo familiar. Arraigo familiar is a social ties to Spain. So let's say you've been living here for more than 3 years, you've been on the padron as well, and you never had anything. You never had a residencia. The only way forward is arraigo familiar.
But you said being on the padron, which perhaps people...
Probably they haven't been there.
Exactly.
Correct.
Generally would not have been.
Well, then they don't exist to the administration.
Yeah,
and if they don't exist, they only exist probably in the UK because they've got their own passport.
What about a Spanish bank account, maybe? Does that help? No?
Well, I'm sure,
it might prove
it's
that
been
somebody,
blocked.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's been blocked if you don't provide the residency nowadays. Because in the old days you could have it, but they push and push and push, and they close the bank accounts. Because I know a client of mine that didn't provide NIE or residency, and they blocked your account. So those people who have nothing, I agree, the only way is to go back to your home country and start all over again. From here to do arraigo, but you need minimum things to do.
You had to have been on, say, for instance, the padron, so proof of your time in Spain.
In this particular case, nothing. No padron, no Spanish bank account, nothing.
So pretty much is like a tourist who came here and never left.
Yeah. I mean, you do deal, though, regularly still with people trying to get TIE.
Yeah, on a daily basis.
Yeah.
You know,
Still that many.
I mean, in general terms, We get the people who wants to solve problems.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they don't, why would they contact us? You know, I mean, at the end of the day, you start telling them the requirements. You know, people know that if you're going to get it legalized, you need to provide the documents. Now, if they don't have the documents, I didn't have a query about like Richard, but probably Richard as an association, they're just there to ask you all these questions. To us, they don't, because if you don't have the documents,
no point.
You have no case.
They're very worried about authority.
Of course.
And authoritative figures, such as lawyers.
But I know that some people are concerned about the fact that if they go onto the system in Spain, that they're going to be chased for tax. That's one of the issues.
Sorry, yeah, that's another.
Yes,
people get worried about.
But one of the prime reasons we hear is people say, look, Spain said with a declaratory system that we don't have to change our cards. And they did say it. Spain said you can keep your cards.
Don't have to.
No. It's not mandatory. And what we say to them is, yes, Spain said that. Europe didn't. And in this case, Europe is
it's
superseding.
the European entry and exit system, ultimately.
Yeah.
It's not the Spanish European entry and exit system.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah.
we say to them, look, that's superseded Spain. So you need to do it. Well, I'm not doing it because Spain said I don't have to.
Okay. But we know that those people, ultimately, when these things come in, these electronic systems, they will experience some
And you
difficulties.
asked about numbers just now.
Yeah.
We think probably 1,000-ish are still on the old system.
The green card.
Yeah.
Or the green piece of paper.
The embassy thinks 2,000. Spain reckons 4,000 plus.
Really? Okay.
With a T.
I've always heard that estimate, actually, of people. That's the kind of who's on the pantry and who isn't. And there's generally sort of 4,000, perhaps more, that perhaps aren't. Okay, we're going to have to wrap it up. Richard, what would you say to anybody who's not dealt with this so far but really need to now?
Get a TIE.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
You can help. Ignacio can help.
Yeah.
So Brexpats in Spain, Brexpats in Spain International on the Facebook page. There's an Eastern version of the Facebook page as well. Richard and the team always willing to help there. And, of course, Ignacio, AlicanteLawyers.es. Don't despair. If there's a way, between the two you guys, you're going to find it.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, and if they want to send their questions now, we're going to just start doing the webinar.
Indeed.
And we're going to cover all these topics, so they could send their questions in half an hour, actually.
Yeah. So 5:30, the webinar on AlicanteLawyers.es. It's live answers to questions there, and Richard and Ignacio will be able to answer for you.
Can I just say one more thing?
Indeed, please.
Do it now, get your TIE, because 2025 is coming up and there's going to be a lot of people who got in pre-Brexit at the end of the Brexit period. They're going to be going for their permanent TIE.
Yeah.
So there'll be another backlog like we saw before.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So better to get in right away.